713-780-ESPN is the number if you want in on the conversation. So Lovie Smith was making the rounds in the national media circuit. He was on Good Morning Football, and he was asked a very interesting question by Peter Schrager about the quarterback situation with the Houston Texans.
First, Deshaun Watson on what happens with that. In time, things work themselves out. There's a lot of things we have to get through with it. It's the reason why, Deshaun didn't play this past year. For me, as I've come into the building, you have to, there are injuries each week, and you plan on some guys being with you, and that's not the case. You look to the next step. You look to the next guy. And for us, of course, Davis Mills came in and did some good things. When you're not the starter, you get a chance to go against the one defense each week. So I got a chance to see him in a lot of different situations. He played about as well as any of the rookie quarterbacks did last year. So excited about some of the things he can bring, and we'll see how the Deshaun Watson deal, ends up.
Isn't it nice to have an NFL head coach being asked a Deshaun-related question and not tip his hand entirely, but give you a real answer? Last year, David Culley was like, well, Deshaun's on the team, but he's not playing. Or at the press conference a year ago, I took this job because Deshaun Watson's our quarterback. And I'm like, David, just stop. Just stop lying to us.
And then it was day-to-day for a long time.
He's day-to-day. I'm like, aren't we all, David Culley? So, look, Lovie Smith's not going to go on Good Morning Football and say, yeah, we're definitely trading Deshaun, because it would make no sense for him to do that. But I do appreciate that answer. And I think the bigger takeaway is what he said about Davis Mills. He spoke highly of Davis Mills, and I think every Texan fan is intrigued with the idea of Pep Hamilton now being the offensive coordinator and seeing another full year of Davis Mills and finding out if Nick Caserio's very first ever draft pick with the Houston Texans could maybe be the long-term answer at quarterback.
It's, at this point, going to be a shock to me if Davis Mills does not begin the 2022 season prep as the unquestioned starter of this organization's football team. It would be an extreme shock. Now, is there a possibility that something falls into their laps that they like better than Davis Mills? I suppose that is the case. But at this point, with the way that Lovie Smith talked about him, the fact that Davis Mills was one of two players brought up in the introductory press conference for Lovie Smith by name, the way Lovie talked about him there, it would be an extreme shock if Davis Mills is not the quarterback, the unquestioned quarterback of this organization in 2022.
Yeah, you better be careful, Cody. You're thinking rationally.
Okay.
Don't do that. The Texans don't often think rationally, okay? The Lovie Smith hire felt pretty rational. You think they're going to do multiple rational things over the span of one offseason? You're crazy.
I don't remember which president it was that had the era of good feelings. We're not there yet with the Houston Texans, but this could be the beginning of the era of rationality over at NRG Stadium.
The Deshaun Watson pipe dream is over for anybody who was still holding out hope that Deshaun Watson could maybe return to Houston and water under the bridge could be had. That's gone. And I do kind of think Lovie tipped his hand in regards to Deshaun Watson, because the last few words he said in that audio we just played, quote, "We'll see how the Deshaun Watson deal ends up," end quote. And maybe he wasn't saying deal in terms of like a trade deal. Maybe he was just saying deal in terms of a situation. But I took that as, we'll see how this trade ends up. Like insinuating what we all know. It's not like Lovie Smith it's not like a crazy hand tip or nobody doesn't know what he has in his hand already. But I think Lovie kind of insinuated that, trade's coming here soon.
The alternate meaning of the noun deal in like, not necessarily like actual trade deal, but like just situationally
right. Yeah,
deal.
It could have been that.
Could have been that.
I didn't hear it as that, though. Maybe I'm overanalyzing here. But I thought Lovie did really well.
Look, if you run an NFL franchise and you don't realize that Deshaun Watson's available for trade, that's your fault. That's not the Texans' fault. They've done everything they can to send up the notice that you can trade for Deshaun Watson.
I mean, Caserio was asked in an interview a couple weeks ago, not before like the season was even over, or maybe right after the season was over. Hey, is Deshaun Watson like ever going to play for the Texans again, or is he going to be traded? And he said it's more than likely that he never plays for the Texans again. So the GM has said it. Lovie basically said it there. Yeah. I think the bigger takeaway, though, is about Davis Mills and the fact that he's going to get a real opportunity to be this team's coach. I do think they'll bring in another quarterback. I don't think Tyrod's back as the backup next year. I think they'll try and bring in someone that maybe could push Davis Mills a little bit more. But I think Davis has earned the opportunity to at least go into training camp as the starter. And as long as he doesn't implode, I think year two in Lovie's in Pep Hamilton's offense, with Pep really getting more of a stranglehold on the play calling and implementing more things he wants to put in there, I think it's a positive thing for this team going forward.
Well, you would hope that the offensive line gets a little bit of solidarity at some point. You would hope that the running back situation gets better. They continue to add talent from the pass catcher standpoint. Obviously, Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins are your 1 and 2 wide receivers. They're back. Brevin Jordan's likely going to begin the year, in my opinion, as the top tight end, but you could add some pieces behind Brevin Jordan. Yeah. There's other wide receiver spots that need to get filled out. Heck, you take 5 or 6 of those guys on the roster. You really only have 2 that you'd be in love with from an offensive standpoint. So, yeah, I want to find out more about Davis Mills, and I've said this a bunch of different times. You maximize Davis Mills' opportunity to succeed in 2022. And if he fails, that same maximization is almost right there in the exact same way for whoever the new quarterback is in 2023. Because that's the reality of the situation, guys. Yep. Davis Mills gets 2022 to impress, and if he doesn't, he's not the starting quarterback the next year.
I mean, the reality is when you're a third-round pick, really if you're not a first-round pick at the quarterback spot, you don't get very many opportunities. You know, it's funny. I was watching that 30 for 30 that Tom Brady did with Charles Woodson talking about the Tuck rule, and Brady came out and said that if the Tuck rule wasn't reversed, he's probably the backup in 2002, and Drew Bledsoe goes back to being the starter. And that's Tom Brady saying that, right? Like, Tom Brady was a 6th-round pick. The margin for error that you get as a mid-round pick, it's not much. So he's got to take advantage of the opportunity and show something next year. Otherwise, if the Texans are picking in the top 5 again, or they have extra draft picks from a Watson trade, they're going to be aggressive to move up, identify their franchise guy, and Caserio will buy himself even more time by going out there and identifying, oh, Bryce Young's my guy, or C.J. Stroud is my guy. Because then you got to give him his chance to pick his quarterback after he now picked Lovie Smith as his second coach.
Yeah, and if you build around Davis Mills this offseason, you'll have an opportunity to really see what Davis Mills is as a quarterback in this league, right? Like this past year, he can use the excuse of, I had the worst run game in the NFL. Oh, my offensive line sucked. The hope is he doesn't have those excuses next year.
Right.
Number one, because I want the Texans to be better and get more talented players. That would be nice. Number two, that gives you more of an actual feel of who Davis Mills is as a quarterback. Because if you put some talented pieces around him and he's still incredibly inconsistent and he looks more like first half of the year Davis Mills versus what we saw over the last 6 games of the 2021 season Davis Mills, then you know you don't have anything there.
Any chance 9 draft picks going to get some more with the Deshaun Watson trade, potentially a Laramie Tunsil trade as well. Any chance, it's probably late, that one of those 9 draft picks is a quarterback. Just to have a little scratch-off ticket just in case.
What is the just in case, though? Like, what does that do for you?
Well,
like, I assume they're going to bring in a quarterback in free agency before the draft.
Sure.
Like a veteran to be QB2 on the step chart. If you're not bringing in a guy who can realistically compete for the backup quarterback spot, I don't understand the point of spending a late day 3 on a QB.
Just rather have like a undrafted guy be the third camp arm and things like that.
Caserio came from the Patriots. Bill Belichick used a late 6th-round pick 199, on Tom Brady. Belichick carried 4 quarterbacks in the year 2000.
Well,
maybe Caserio wants to try and take a stab on finding his Tom Brady in the late rounds.
Well, even when they had Tom Brady well-established, Ryan Mallett was a draft pick.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo was a draft pick up in New England. Now, I believe that Garoppolo was picked in the hopes that Tom Brady's career would be finishing up and they could just turn the thing over to Jimmy G.
Yeah.
That obviously didn't happen.
Well, because Garoppolo was a 2nd-round pick, so when they took him, the plan was, all right, Brady's going to play for a couple more years. He's getting into his mid to late 30s, and then we make the transition. Problem was Brady just never stopped being good. He never stopped being great. So he outlived the rebuild plan they had in place with Garoppolo.
Yeah, and I think a lot of Bill Belichick doing that, because y'all are right. He drafted a ton of quarterbacks while Tom Brady was already his franchise quarterback. I think it was twofold. Number one, Bill Belichick's just an a-hole, and he's the type of guy to do that. Number two, he wanted to push Tom Brady.
Sure.
He wanted to push Tom Brady. Like, yeah, that's cool. You've won a couple of rings, but you think you're safe here? I'm going to keep drafting guys to make sure that you keep that fire under your ass and you keep working.
Johnny Foxborough.
The
legendary rumor of Johnny Foxborough.
Yeah. So I'm with you. Davis Mills, that's the most important thing that Lovie Smith said on Good Morning Football today, is that the Texans do appear and do plan to be trying to build around Davis Mills this offseason.
Andrew on the text line, how certain are you guys that Watson gets traded this offseason? I'm as certain as I've ever been about anything that Deshaun Watson will be moved at some point this offseason. He is not going to be on the roster. Barring criminal charges, which does not seem likely at all at this point, I think he's gone.